In continuing to consider important aspects of this inner reality that I'm referring to as basic training and referring to as the fundamental area from which the need for any kind of therapy arises, there's an aspect of it that is very important in understanding the nature of the basic training that we fundamentally receive. In other words, if our adults, if our caretakers, remember now, they're doing it and they don't know they're doing it. So that I'm, in a certain sense, running close to blaming the parents, but I'm saying they don't know they're doing it. Right? If the parents, the caretakers, have to some degree or other been inflicted with a negative, with a lack, with a uncare, with a wrong care, with a wrong message that has been imposed upon them, and they are not aware of it, they will in turn tend to inflict that message on anyone in their care, or indeed with anyone that they're dealing with in the course of a lifetime. Now that means that very often when children are being raised by parents who are unaware of their basic training and the content of it, they receive certain negative messages that they will ingest in their turn. For example, recently, in the example that I gave with the little child who was less than 1 year old, who was with his mother and grandmother, it was quite clear that the grandmother was inflicting her shame on that little child by saying, "Oh, you're embarrassing me," or "You're yelling," or "You're doing a public scene which is not acceptable," and so on. So the child, less than 1 year old, feels that his speech, his crying, his noises, whatever he was doing, is wrong because the adult is implicitly saying something like, not necessarily using these words, but implicitly saying something like, "What's wrong with you? Why are you not doing what I need you to do? What's wrong with you? Why are you doing the wrong thing by my judgments?" You see? And so, why are you yelling like that? Why are you crying out for this need? Why are you doing that thing? Recently, a client of mine described an example where two young children were playing with sticks, and the adults were telling them to put the sticks. They weren't doing any harm with the sticks. They weren't hurting each other or anything close to it. But the adults were frightened by the sticks, and therefore the kids had to put the sticks down. They were doing something wrong. "What's wrong with you? Why don't you act with those sticks the way I need you to?" You see, that kind of implicit message. Don't make noise. Don't embarrass me. Don't ask me for something I can't give you. Whatever the nature, you see, of that message is, the implicit impact in my own basic training, in the recipient's basic training, will be, I'm doing something wrong, I'm not doing something right. And in turn, I will feel more and more wrong about that. Now, what that means is that part of a very important part of this basic training that we're talking about, and a very important part of dealing with it, is to recognize how fundamental that is in each one of us and how important it is in our sense of ourselves. Now, what that means is that more often than not, a less than helpful, a defective basic training will teach an individual that the locus of rightness, the location of right conduct, the location of feeling right, is not in myself, is not in himself or herself, but is located somewhere outside. It's right to do what they tell me. It's right to do what he or she tells me. It's right to follow that code, or it's right to do this or that. I'm never right, or I'm some degree of being wrong or off base, no matter what I say, what I do, what I feel, and so on. So I must be wary. I must be careful because I'm not going to do the right thing. That lack of one's own certitude is exactly what leads me to make the comparison to those elephants in South Africa. In other words, when those elephants in South Africa are put back with the matriarchal herds, and when they live past their age of 14, they study, they look at what the teacher elephants are doing in the herd. But what they do is they come out with a knowledge, with a confidence of what they themselves are and what they should be. In other words, they locate elephantness and how to be an elephant in themselves. And that is a fundamental aspect of basic training, which relates directly to whether or not therapy is any good. Now, a good example of that is the fact that you individually, hopefully, are listening to my talks here today. If you are listening to what I am saying, and however unconsciously or indirectly or implicitly saying to yourself, "Oh, I'm going to do what he says. I'm going to do what he's saying is right. That's the right way to do it." No, that you're missing the whole point. You shouldn't even be listening to me in the sense that we're talking about this. Never mind any of these other people who want to tell us what to do and how the right way to do it, and here's what you ought to and shouldn't, and all that nonsense. You see, because what that does is it deprives each one of us individually of that sense of the locus of authority, of the right to exist, of the sense of oneself, inside of oneself. I like to use metaphors that for these energies, and this one I refer to as the right, the feeling of sovereignty, of the fact that you are the king or the queen of your own kingdom and have the right to define your own personality and who you are. Now, the thing here is one has to be very careful, because when we receive the kind of training that we normally do, and the locus of rightness is somewhere else, you see, then it becomes very tentative whether or not we're allowed to have that kind of authority in ourselves. My best illustration of that, in my opinion, is the way individuals, any man or woman, how we feel when people sing happy birthday to us. Now, if you're sitting at the table and the people are gathered around to celebrate your birthday, and at the moment that they're going to sing happy birthday, that person, you individually, become the focus of their love, of their attention, of their energy. And I have never seen a celebration of that kind of happy birthday in a restaurant, let's say, where I'm at a neighboring table, so without the individual who's the focus of it all squirming and feeling uncomfortable and can't wait until they stop singing and making that themselves the focus of the attention. What's the feeling? What's the emotion in basic training that is being responded to there? It's not right for me to get all this attention. It's not right for me to be the focus. It's not right for me to enjoy this love, this attention, and all the rest of it. And therefore, I'm too big for my britches, or I'm being conceited, or I'm being arrogant, or God knows what, you see. It's wrong for me to do that. Well, those emotions, those feelings, more or less intense, more or less obstructing of any sense of the right of yourself to have these things, is one of the major indications that the basic training says you're not right, that rightness is somewhere else and you don't know what it is. And so your feeling, your training, your way of responding, you're asking the question. Now, that doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to be right. If I'm Hitler, there are questions I need to ask about what I think is right. But my right to ask, my right to study, my right to say, well, wait a minute, what's an effective way for me to be an elephant, to be a human being here in the crowd of human beings? I can do that, you see. And the right to say the right to locate the mission I'm on, the things I'm trying to achieve, the feelings I have, what I want to do, to locate that in myself is all important and all fundamental. So if I'm going to therapy and the therapist essentially usurps my authority of being what's right for me, it could be well-intentioned, I'm not saying it isn't, but it's missing the most important of the points. I want to come out of the experience as a well-trained elephant. I want to come out of the experience as my right to be my own human being, to live life as I understand it, as I am developing it, as I am evolving my own interests, my own feelings, my own knowledge, my own learning. It's not that the issue is closed and there's nothing further to do. Quite the opposite. And it doesn't have to be done all at once. In other words, if I have been trained to ignore myself and to not be the center, then I will only gradually learn to be it. But learn it I will. And the thing to be aware of and to be vigilant about is whether or not anyone or anything or any creed or anything else is essentially telling me not to be my own sovereign, not to be my own king or queen, not to be the center of the development of my own life and to be developing my own interests and point of view. There's, in any specific thing that we are going to discuss as we subsequently go down the road and talk about the various individual problems and questions that can be raised out of one's basic training, out of one's experience, if the fundamental point that each one of these things has the right to be resident in ourselves and has to be an aspect of my own sense of my own kingship, my own sovereignty as I move through the world, then we're missing the point. Whatever individual thing I must learn, it is I who must learn it. It is my being a better elephant that must be the product of this. I like the fact that the word authority begins with the word author, because I have my authority and I'm the author of my deeds, the author of my thoughts, the author of what I'm going to do in life. And it is absolutely that which we should be originally raised in if we're receiving effective basic training. You see, little Johnny, little Mary, I see that you're pretty. I see that you're energetic. I see that you're smart. I see that you're imaginative. I see that you're sexual. I see that you have ambitions and things that you want to do. I see that you are these wonderful things. And you have the right to be that in yourself. I am raising you to be the best kind of elephant you can be, you see, because it's you. And that means that you will not be a carbon copy of me. You will not necessarily do what I do. You may, in the being of yourself and in the full affirmation of who you are, walk a completely different path from mine. So be it. Bravo. I have raised you well if I see that you are free to do that in all the ways that that's possible. The loves that you choose to have, the jobs you choose to pursue, the hobbies, the interests that you pursue, and so on. It's all defined by you. And the degree to which each one of us has individually been brought to see that we are at the center of this whole process and have the right to make the sovereign decisions for ourselves, you see, that's effective basic training. Each one of us gets to be the individual that he or she is in relation to all the he's or she's that are surrounding us in human society. It's that paradoxical combination of myself as an individual with all the others with whom I am individually together that we can have an effective sort of relationship. And if you think about it, that's how we measure it. We don't want to be subjected to a Hitler who's going to kill 55 million of us. We do want to relate to the Mother Teresa's who help this be a more positive experience that we all go forward in. And that comes out of that sense of who I am as an adult, effective human being. What I am with you as we go through life, separately and together.